Welcome to another Colors of Prog, Season 3, Episode 17. Of course, this is the YouTube, Podbean, and Facebook program where I discuss progressive rock recordings, international ones, past and present, from space. So, today I'm going to do a little something a little different, more folky. So, first we're going to discuss the Strawbs. The Strawbs should be a familiar name to many. Labeled as progressive rockers, they actually are really more progressive folk, if there could be such a thing, than anything else. In 1967, a young Sandy Denny, yes, Sandy Denny from Fairport, was playing in a nightclub in Denmark, I believe, and caught the attention of Dave Cousins, whose band at the time was called the Strawbs. Dave Cousins and the Strawbs. The band was making the rounds in the club circuit. And Dave Cousins saw Sandy Denny perform on stage in his clubs many times. They said, "Oh, you should join my band." And this is pre-Fairport. So they did a demo, and the demo was passed from a Danish radio DJ to the head of a Danish label in Denmark. Originally called All Our Own Work. It was recorded in '67, but not released until '73. And by then only on the American Pickwick label, which specialized in budget releases of deleted record company product they thought they could turn a profit on, even if a modest one. I think a lot of people remember the Pickwick label back in the early '70s. Maybe there was some remainder down to 99 cents by the mid '70s or even early '80s. Pharmacies, drugstores, maybe some supermarkets always had a rack of Pickwick records, amongst other things. And you would see the oddest things. There used to be Pickwick used to, in general, they were kind of like cheaply produced, and they had like this really shiny veneer they used for their label. And you're like, how many people knew what to make of Pickwick? So Pickwick had a subsidiary called Hallmark. Yes, Hallmark, in the UK. And I guess Pickwick decided to release All Our Own Work via the Hallmark label. So this showed up two places. It showed up in the US on Pickwick alone, and in the UK under Hallmark. And here's it, the album cover. And here's the back. And it's quite something. I'll get to that in a minute. Shortly after this recording, Sandy Denny left Cousins and Company and joined Fairport Convention, taking with her only writing credit from this album, Who Knows Where the Time Goes, famously performed by Fairport and Judy Collins and others. What does this sound like? It's really good, I thought. I was surprised. I mean, Dave Cousins, no doubt, and I'm going to discuss this again, the band at the time was Dave Cousins, Tony Hooper, Ron Chesterman on bass, Tony Hooper with vocals and guitars, and Ken Goodman on drums. I'm not sure if Ken was an actual member of the Strawbs or just joined. He was a touring member. But anyway, it's interesting to hear Sandy Denny sing shared lead vocals with Cousins, because you can't really pick out Dave Cousins' distinctive vocal intonation and style. You can when he's singing songs solo, but when Sandy Denny and Cousins are singing together. It sounds like one of these really good British folk bands from that period, or the early 70s, late 60s. And this just beat them by about a year or so. There's some country and western theme music here, but that was the thing with Cousins, too, which he may deny or not. Early Strawbs music and some later Strawbs music has this infatuation with American country and western, as well as British folk. So by 1969, the first proper Strawbs album was released. Then its follow-up, 1970's Dragonfly, showed a British folk band with influences from Old English history, I'm talking about the Strawbs, and American country and western. There is little progressive about it if you listen to those two albums, save for an 11-minute ballad titled The Vision of the Lady of the Lake. By mid-1970, only Dave Cousins and Tony Hooper remained. Singer-bassist John Ford and singer-percussionist Richard Hudson, as well as rising star studio keyboardist Rick Wakeman, then joined. They recorded a live album of all original songs called Just a Collection of Antiques and Curios, which contained one 12-minute track in 4 parts. I believe it's called the Antique Suite, and one 9-minute track, Where is the Dream of Your Youth? So, in a way, that version of the Strawbs could be categorized as folk prog, Celtic folk, psychedelic folk, maybe more Steel-Eye Span than Fairport. They're from the Witchwood, which quite a few people seem to like, which is this album on the old A&M label. Always confounded people because also featured Wakeman's last appearance with the band before joining Yes. Now, back to From the Witchwood, lyrically it's set uncomfortably for newbie listeners between pagan cultural history of historic England and a heavy dose of Catholicism. It's either or and but. Now, Bursting at the Seams, don't worry, it's not a Strawbs-centric show, which is this one. Bursting at the Seams from 1973 was the first Strawbs album to feature totally shorter songs with, I believe, Lay Down became a single. And it got radio airplay, and that's nice. By Hero and Heroine in 1974, Hudson and Ford were gone, and now Dave Cousins was joined by Dave Lambert, who also appears on Bursting at the Seams, and the Strawbs would go through various lineups and sometimes periods of inactivity over the years, but sometimes even later works like 2017's The Ferryman's Curse would be quite interesting. Now, Hudson-Ford, after leaving the Strawbs, would regroup. They recorded 3 albums, Nickelodeon, Free Spirit, and Worlds Collide. They were an attempt to break into a worldwide market as a duo, but their electric rock and soft folk was perhaps a bit too bland and innocuous for the radio at the time. Got to remember when these were released, there were similar acts, Seals and Crofts with Summer Breeze, Ventura Highway from America, even 10cc, I'm Not in Love. They were there. That was the sound, amongst other music, but that was the predominant sound on American AM radio on the beaches in the summer. Lovers, young lovers, old lovers. They just hit at the right spot. The thing about Hudson-Ford, they didn't really have catchy songs. They didn't have a hit song. So they had music like that in that vein, but they just didn't. They did have, on the debut, Nickelodeon, their one and only minor hit called Pick Up the Pieces, not the average white band song. Even that 2 minutes, 33 seconds, ideal for single era radio play, it just wasn't enough, I would say. Collectors may want to know, yes, of Rick Wakeman music, that Wakeman actually joined Hudson-Ford when they left the Strawbs. He went along with them, and he appears on the entire album, playing harpsichord, piano, and lots of other things. Very friendly, innocuous music. By 1979, they reinvented themselves as a poppy new wave band, Hudson-Ford, and they briefly returned as the Monks, probably unaware that there was a early proto-punk band from Europe made of American servicemen and expat Americans called the Monks, and that was pretty harsh music, but maybe they weren't aware of that. But anyway, they returned as the Monks, and their material was very new wavy, synthesizer driven, and let's just say the Monks went nowhere. For some reason, the Strawbs albums with Hudson-Ford from the 70s were and remain wildly popular in South Africa. When an apparently ailing Dave Cousins was contacted by a South African documentary film crew within the last 2 years, he reunited with Ford and keyboardist Blue Weaver, who joined when Rick Wakeman left. And there's a new album with just apparently Dave Cousins, Ford, and Blue Weaver. It's scheduled for release in the summer of 2023. So that's pretty interesting. It's called The Magic of It All. Now, the thing is, I was drawn to this, covering the Strawbs and Hudson-Ford, because there's a lot going on right now, because the last well-received Strawbs album was called Settlement, and that was recorded in lockdown, where everybody sent pieces and contributions to each other, and it was produced and mixed and everything, and actually it was quite decent. The history of the Strawbs is Dave Cousins is the band leader, and anybody else works with him. That's the way it is. So anyway, I mentioned Dave Cousins has been ailing. He's got some serious health issues. Thought he was going to retire earlier, but when this South African documentary film crew came in and approached him, he was considering doing a one-off festival appearance in the UK with this duo, but right now has publicly displayed, at least on his own Facebook page, wildly unpopular thoughts about past and fellow band members, and some of those guys have been chiming in like, I don't want to get involved in this. I like being in the Strawbs, et cetera, et cetera. I would love to play with Dave, but Very interesting stuff going on now. But I just wanted to cover some Strawbs albums. There's too many to do in one sitting, and a lot of them are wildly inconsistent. But that's a way to cover, which was interesting to note. The Sandy Denny and the Strawbs were the very first Strawbs album. Cover a few early Strawbs albums, and Hudson-Ford, which were offshoots of the Strawbs. And yet, they wanted to be wildly popular. Probably thought they would be wildly popular with their very innocuous melodic sound, and they weren't. So they tried a couple times. Anyway, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoy it. It's a bit different.